And the reason they never succeed in making money, just like when you want to have an orgasm, you keep focusing on it, you never get it. When you just enjoy the process, it happens. So to me, it needs to be about the journey that you enjoy. They always tell you you can do anything. And then you know what they say? Sky is the limit. They put the limit right there. The sky is the limit. Now, most people probably don't know the sky doesn't exist, right? Sky is a figment of our imagination. I think it's all about asking the right questions, because you can hire the smart people to find the right answers. But you as an entrepreneur have to ask the right question, because the question you ask is the problem you solve.
Hi, it's Robin Sharma, and you're tuning into the Millionaire Student Show with Sashin.
Sashin.
Everyone, welcome to another episode on the Millionaire Student Show, where I get the opportunity to pick the minds of this generation's thought leaders, change makers, disruptors, innovators, and inspirations. Dissect their story from the pain they went through, the price they paid, and what their prize looks like today. I formulated the Millionaire Student Self-Development System and Company because this is what I was searching for when I first entered the entrepreneurial world at 17 years old. My mission and purpose is to serve you with virtual mentorship to consciously make your clock tick without taking the thunder away from today's guest. He was born and he grew up in poverty in New Delhi and in villages in Uttar Pradesh, India. He moved to USA with $5 in his back pocket and turned it into billions. Today, he is an entrepreneur, philanthropist. He is driven to solve global grand challenges through innovation, a man who knows no limits. He pushes big dreams into action. His audacious vision and magnetic personality continually inspires others to follow what feels impossible. He's the founder of several successful companies, including Moon Express, Viome, Bluedot, TalentWise, Intelius and InfoSpace. He sees beyond the current business and tech landscape, creating companies that make a true impact. His company, Moon Express, is the only company in the world to have the permission to leave Earth orbit and land on the moon with the goal to harvest planetary resources and to develop infrastructure to make humanity a multi-planetary society. His company, Viome, aims to one day make illness a choice, whether it's business or life. He is guided by one firm belief: our only limit is our imagination. The Millionaire Students, please help me in welcoming today's guest, who has been awarded many accolades, such as Ernst & Young's Entrepreneur of the Year, Silicon India's Most Admired Serial Entrepreneur, the receiver of Albert Einstein Technology Medal for his pioneers in technology, recipient of Ellis Island Medal of Honor, Most Creative Person by Fast Company, Top 50 Philanthropist of 2018 by Town and Country Magazine, Humanitarian Innovation Award at the United Nations, Distinguished Global Thinker Award by ILM, and many more. His next endeavor is to travel to the moon using lunar resources for innovation here on Earth. Naveen Jain. Naveen, thank you so much for physically, mentally, and spiritually being on the Millionaire Student Show today. I truly appreciate your time.
But Sashin, it's such a pleasure to be here, and I'm looking forward to our conversation.
I've had the chance to truly dissect your story, your mission, and your accomplishments. And for those who have never heard of the name Naveen Jain before, I'm elated that you're actually on the show, and I'll tell you why. Because your mindset and your mission is nothing short of impactful. But for those who haven't heard the name before, don't know your story, how did it all begin for you?
Well, Sachin, is everyone, when you look back in life, somehow want to find out what was that one single thing that changed people's lives. And I think in general, what I find is life is a continuum. You constantly adding on to everything you learn, and one day it is the last straw that breaks the camel's back. And it's not that last straw that actually changed anything. It just happened to be the time when you said enough is enough, right? And that's the time people think somehow magic happened. But the magic actually starts happening way before that, right? And that is the key to really success in life, is never to look for that moment where you think something is suddenly going to change, because every single person you interact with, every single thing you do, everything that does not work, everything that actually does work, every person who made you happy, every person who made you angry, everything that happens in your life really makes you who you are. So if you were to ever look back and say, a lot of people ask me, say, if you go back and look at your life, what would you change? And the answer is absolutely nothing, because if you changed one thing, suddenly that ripple effect will make you a completely different person. So if you're in love with who you are, why would you want to change that?
Definitely. And I know you came from very humble beginnings, but what inspired you to actually make that shift from India to United States? Was it that you had enough pain that you actually wanted to make that conscious decision? Or did you move to seek future opportunities? Or did you always have that vision for who you were becoming?
Answer to Sachin is all of that is none of that. It so happened that, I was just finishing up my graduate degrees. And at that point, there was a company who came along and, one thing led to another. I should have never actually even applied for the job, because the company was actually looking for a software engineer. And here I was, I have never seen a computer in my life. I have no idea what this thing is about. It so happened I was having a lunch with a bunch of buddies, and these guys were all genius. And they say, we just finished this aptitude test for this company that came from the United States. This is the toughest thing they have ever done. And me being me, it's like, how tough can that be? I mean, here we went to IIT. I mean, there's all this. How tough can it be? And the guy looks at me. It's like, obviously, you have not taken the test. People look like people who have not taken the test. I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to go take the damn test. I don't really care. I want to go ace the damn thing. So I took the test, aced it, and I got a call next week and saying, they would like to interview me for this job. And it's like, what are you talking about? I said, what's the job? He said, software engineer, you're going to be programming computers. I said, what's a computer? I have no idea what the computer is. And they looked at my score. It's like, looks to me, you just have everything that it takes to be a computer programmer. I said, I don't know what you're looking at, but if you think I've got everything I need, then here I am. I'll do it. Right. So my point was, it wasn't something that I planned. It wasn't something that I was looking for. It is something that happened. And that to me, everyone who becomes somehow in their mind successful, go back and rewrite the history. When I was young and I had this dream of all these things, and I always wanted to do that. But the life is so amazing. To me, the biggest mentor for every one of us, if I were to say that, is really our lives. Right? Our life is the biggest mentor, because it never stops teaching. It is we stop learning. So we keep looking for mentors outside us. The point is, your life, it will teach you everything. Every time you get your ass kicked, you learn. Every time you trip over, you learn. Every time when you don't work out. So biggest learnings for every one of us is when things don't quite work out. The learnings don't happen when everything worked out, because you think you're a genius. You think you got everything figured out until you get your ass handed to you another time, right?
That's so true. And, people's path is formed through what they do, but most importantly, they want it so planned out and so perfected. And that's why they find those flaws and play the comparing game, and it leads to disappointment at the end.
Honestly, the stress or disappointment or anxiety is caused by the mismatch of your expectations and reality. right? And that's where the stress happens, because you expected something the reality doesn't deliver, at least not right now at this second. And you think, I'm stressed, I got anxiety, and my life is not working out well. But point is, every one of these things are simply a stepping stone. The thing, it is where the things the way they are is where they're supposed to be. And the way you do is to say, you know what, I'm going to accept it, and then I'm going to do everything to move forward from here, rather than look back and saying, how did I end up here? You can't change what happened, but you can take a step right now to move the things forward, right? So one of the things that I find is, people need to accept and expect the ups and downs of life. And that, to me, what I have, found is that life, every person's life, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're just living life, it's full of ups and downs. So our life is like an, heartbeat. It goes up and down and up and down. When it's smooth, you're dead. So the point is, when you're looking for a life that is so smooth that there are no ups and downs, you're living a life of a dead person. You are a zombie. You have nothing in your life that you should be proud of if you're living a smooth life. This tells you you're alive. And the trick in that session is that when you are at the bottom of that beat, your job is not to feel bad, but to hunker down and work harder, because the next beat is going to be up, right? That is going to come. And when you are on the top of that beat, when you're on top of the game, when you're on top of that world, never get too cocky, because remember, the winter is coming, and winter will be coming. Winter shall come, and winter does come. And then you suddenly remember, oh my God, where are my friends? Well, you didn't remember them when you were on the top of the beat. They don't remember you when you need their help, right? So to me, it is you always know that they're going to be ups and downs, and not only expect them, but to accept them with a thing. You know what? That too happened. Now I'm ready for the next beat here.
Naveen, you have founded several successful entities. You have Moon Express, which is the only company in the world to have the permission to leave Earth orbit and land on the moon, with the goal to harvest planetary resources and to develop infrastructure to make humanity a multi-planetary society. And your other company, Viome, aims to one day make illness a choice. You're definitely on a mission to make an impact. What is your vision behind those companies?
Yeah, so I think anytime you start a company, in my opinion, you have to ask yourself 3 sets of questions. And I really think this is something anyone who's listening to it, just take it too hard. You have to ask yourself, why this, why now, and why me? And why this is about simple thing. God forbid you're actually successful in doing what you're about to be doing. Is it really going to help 1 million people, 100 million people, or billion people live a better life? Whatever that is. If the answer to that is no, then why would you want to dedicate 10 years of your life to doing something that's just not going to move a needle? Now, and there is a lot of reasoning behind that, is because when you are able to help 1 billion people live a better life, you are automatically going to create $100 billion company, right? That means if you focus on making money, it's very unlikely you will end up making money. But if you focus on helping people do better, whatever that is, then you will have a sustainably strong company that you can create, right? So it is about creating a sustainable company and also solving the pain point. And the bigger the problem, the bigger the opportunity, right? The second part of the thing really is, before you do something, ask yourself, are you truly obsessed about solving this problem? Not, I am passionate about it. Passion is for losers. Passion is for hobbies, right? I am passionate about collecting space rocks. But you know what? I'm obsessed about solving the healthcare problems. I want to solve because I don't want to be sick. I don't want my children to be getting, any of these chronic diseases. God forbid they ever get cancer. God forbid they ever get, depression or anxiety or all kinds of things that is just killing humanity, right? So to me, that is a problem worth solving for yourself, your children, your grandchildren, and for the humanity as such, right? The second part of the puzzle is why now? The why now, the reason it is most important is that everyone talks about that when you start a company, the biggest thing you're going for yourself is your vision, your ideas, and all that, and your team and all that bullshit you hear. The biggest thing that really determines whether you're going to be successful or not is timing, right? So I don't care what all the bullshit you hear from everybody. The timing is really what matters. Facebook wasn't the first company to come up with a social networking. That was MySpace. Before that, it was a Friendster. I mean, if you go back and look at almost every company, look at Google. Before Google, there were Alta Vista, the Inktomi, Yahoo and Lycos. And you can go through Excite, all these search engines that came about. So it was all about timing, right? So the reason for the timing is, what is it that you can do now based on what the technologies are available to you that you couldn't do a decade ago? And that is the key. If something could have been done a decade ago because everything that you needed to do was available and it's not done, you have to believe that you're not the smartest guy in the world. Somebody would have done it. But when timing turns out right, that all the confluence of technology that are coming together allows you to do things that couldn't be done. For example, COVID happened. Suddenly, the type of things you can do today couldn't have been done pre-COVID. Who would have ever thought you're going to have virtual summit? People are going to say, are you crazy? Nobody's going to do that. Guess what? It happened, and now it's happening, right? So my point is, suddenly when there are these type of changes, so for example, when I started Viome, what was the reason to solve the healthcare problem? What does need to happen? What needs to happen is you have to be able to understand everything that's happening inside the human body. So you have to digitize the human body. To do that, the cost of sequencing has to keep coming down. 10 years ago, it used to be $100,000. Even if it came down to $10,000 or $1,000, you can't do it, because to get multi-million people, you can't afford to pay $10,000 or $1,000. It had to be substantially under $100 to make it happen. Guess what? 4 years ago, when I started Viome, I started to see the cost of sequencing was plummeting. That means by the time I launched my product, it was going to be way under $100. The second part that needed to happen was, you are able to now, God forbid, you're able to digitize the human body. The amount of data you're going to collect, is there a computer out there you can process it cheap enough that you can do? It would require a supercomputer. Guess what? AWS happened, and now you're able to fire up all the damn processing you want for really, really cheap. So that was working out well. And the third thing is, now you got all this data that you have processed. How are you going to make any sense of it? And that's where the AI came in. That is AI powerful enough for you to be able to make sense of it? And all three things were happening. And that's why I say time is now. Now, the last part is why me? And by the way, that is the most important thing you have to ask, why me? And the reason about why me is, what is the question that you are asking that is different from what everyone else is asking? If you're asking the same question as everyone else, you're solving the same problem as anyone else. That means you are working on a commodity business. When you look at the problem slightly differently than anyone, now you have a new angle of why you're going to do things in a different way, and that way actually might likely be very different and successful, right? So for example, now to give you two examples of that, when I was doing the Moon Express, we say, look, we want people to be able to live on the moon, Mars, and beyond, because all 7 billion of us are living on a single planet, a single spacecraft we call planet Earth, right? Now, God forbid, there is a large asteroid that ends up hitting our spacecraft. All of us are going to die, all of us, right? The humanity will not survive. And it's not that the planet won't survive. Planet would survive just fine. In fact, if you go back and look at history, when 80 million years ago, when the asteroid hit, all the dinosaurs, which were substantially much bigger species, they all died. Planet not only survived, planet thrived, and in fact, it created humans right after that. You say, that was dinosaurs. Who needs the dinosaurs? We're going to create humans now, right? Guess what? If we don't take care of ourselves, all the human species may get wiped out, and planet may create someday superhumans for all we know, right? But point is, if you want our species to survive, we have to be multi-planet. Now, every time I say, look, we can now live on the moon, every time the people ask the same question. If you're going to live on the moon, how are you going to grow the food on the moon? Now, That is not a bad question, but if everyone is asking the question of how to grow the food on the moon, the only solution is to find a way to grow the food on the moon. But what if you were to change that question and say, why do we eat food? Why we eat food? And now when you ask the question, why do we eat food? On the surface, it looks like a dumb question. But guess what? The only reason you eat food is because you need energy and you need nutrition. Now you say, oh, energy. Plants get energy from photosynthesis. Can we do that? A lot of bacteria gets energy from radiation. Can we do that? So now you can think about how to get energy and nutrition. What if you need hydrogen? You need oxygen. Well, if there is a water, you got hydrogen and oxygen. So my point is now you have many different ways of solving the problem that could not have been solved before by simply asking a different question. So now applying that to Viome, when I started the healthcare company, we all realized that all the science is leading towards a path where we realize that our gut, there are 39 trillion organisms in our gut called microbiome. They are responsible for keeping us healthy. And when there is an imbalance of those or dysbiosis of the gut, we get sick. Now, everybody, that knowledge is well understood. Then why was the problem not getting solved? So I kept thinking, wait a sec, if everybody knows that gut microbiome is a key to your health, and there are tens of companies looking at gut microbiome, why is this problem not getting solved? Comes down to the same thing. I say, what question are they asking? And it turns out everyone was asking the same question, which is, I want to know every organism that is in people's gut, because they thought once they find out what organisms are there, they'll be able to find out people who have diabetes have these organisms, people who don't this. I thought, I'm not a scientist. I thought, what if these organisms are like human beings? They could be thousands of people with different names doing exactly the same thing. So how would we know two people can have a disease, but completely different organism, and it's still producing the same thing that's causing a disease? Or worse yet, what if, like human beings, depending on the environment, they change their behavior? So you and I are talking about entrepreneurship. We go out drinking, we talk about girls, right? We go out with a bunch of buddies in a mob, we become a different person. So my point is, environment changes the behavior. What if these organisms are the same way? When they are in your gut, they may be doing something healthy. They come into my gut, all kinds of ruckus going on. They say, I will join the ruckus. And we're all going to produce the things that are bad for this guy. And that's literally what happened. So I say, what if we focus on not who they are, but what they are doing and what they are producing? Because our body doesn't know who's doing it. They just simply know what chemicals are being produced. And that's what makes you sick. And that simple change of that question allowed us to find the technology that looks at what genes are expressed, not who is there, and that changed the trajectory. So now we can detect why people have obesity, why people have diabetes, why people have autoimmune disease, why people have IBS, IBD, depression, anxiety. We can now look at the underlying mechanism for cancer. And now once we know that, we can give you the nutrition or develop a vaccine to prevent that from happening in the first place. Now, remember, when I give the nutrition, it is not something for everyone. For each individual, the underlying things are very different. That means for me, the broccoli is bad. But for you, the broccoli may be the superfood, because each individual is completely different. So it is not a food is healthy or unhealthy. It is healthy or unhealthy for you. And that is the trick. We realize is there is no such thing as universal healthy supplement, universal healthy food. It has to be individualized for each individual. And what if that could be done? And that's literally where we are now, is we're developing the precision supplements. We make each capsule for each individual. After you do the test, we look at, say, what ingredients you need. And like apps, we put in a capsule. And obviously, it's all done by robotics. But the fact is, like a little apps putting the stuff into the capsule for each individual and shipping it to you, right? And same thing on the food. We tell you exactly what food to avoid and why, what food you should eat and why. Now, remember in the beginning when you said, my mission is to make illness truly a matter of choice. That means illness can be optional. I didn't say my mission is to eliminate illness. And you know why? If I say that, that tells you that you don't need to do anything. I am the one, it's in my power to get rid of all the illness. Instead, what I'm saying is, I don't have that power, but I can give Sashin you the information, make you empowered to take control of your own health. And you may say, you know what? Screw that. I'm going to eat my broccoli. I love it. Or you tell me not to eat eggs. I love eggs. I'm going to eat it. You know what? Being sick is your choice, not my choice, right? So my point is each individual can make a choice. Like you can tell someone smoking is bad for your lungs. And someone says, you know what? I'm going to smoke. You know what? Your being sick is your choice. Be my guest, right? And that's the reason we say we can't eliminate illness, but we can make it optional.
There's so much of valuable stuff that you covered in that question. And, most importantly, I mean, you answered about 10 of my questions in one, which I want to be able to dissect a few things that you brought up there. The very first thing was people should make it mandatory to answer those 3 questions, 3 points when they formulate a business, because starting a business today is as easy as getting a title and saying I'm self-employed, as opposed to truly going out there and solving that problem, truly going out there and asking yourself the answers to the questions. But most importantly, do you think life is about finding the correct answers or learning how to ask the right questions?
Well, I think it's all about asking the right questions, because you can hire the smart people to find the right answers. But you as an entrepreneur have to ask the right question, because the question you ask is the problem you solve.
What's your daily process or methodologies that you implement to continuously expand your mindset? Do you have a set amount of duration that you study per day? Do you allocate that to someone else and you focus on just being that visionary? What's your methodologies? So
I think I'm glad you asked about the mindset, because a lot of people who tend to focus on habits, the people say 7 habits off, right? And I think that's a dumb question, because habits don't make the person who you are, right? You can't follow someone's habits and become them, right? Tony Robbins takes an ice bath in the morning. You can take an ice bath 3 times a day. You don't become Tony Robbins, right? But you become Tony Robbins by thinking like Tony Robbins, not by behaving like Tony Robbins. So in terms of mindset, so I think what I do is, before I enter any industry, I am an information junkie. I read a lot. And one of the interesting things is I never read one book on a subject, because what happens is when you read one book on a subject, the author's view becomes your view. I read a dozen books on that subject, because then you have 12 different opinions of how this problem could be solved. And then guess what happens? I form the 13th opinion, which is mine, by actually dissecting and connecting the dots from different people to say, what if this was true? And you are able to now look at the world very differently than any of those 12 people did. So that's one part. Second thing is, I'm a big believer that when you start, you don't want to be reading books, because by the time books are published, they're already obsolete. I look at the latest scientific journals in each category. So the way I do that is, on my Twitter account, I don't follow people. I simply, for each area that I'm interested in, I follow all the latest scientific journals. And when I wake up in the morning, I go to, say, my microbiome feed. Every single research that has published that day, I read every one of them. And guess what happens? And then I suddenly say, oh my God, like last week, I saw that every cancer they looked at has a microorganism inside the tumor. And I'm thinking, wait a second, that means cancer is simply an infectious disease. You should be able to develop a vaccine for it, right? Or you see that addiction. So they did a research that came out, I think it was last week, where they actually they took the people who had alcohol addiction and they did the microbiome transplant, basically a poop transplant on these people. And suddenly the craving for alcohol went away. Now imagine that. These microbiome, the organism in your gut, are pulling the strings to make you crave the food they want. Right? And when you change them, the craving is gone. They make you control their behavior. So my point I'm trying to say is that your gut controls your brain. And when you change the gut, when you eat right, suddenly the depression is gone, the anxiety is gone, all the mood disorders are gone. And even the things like, even now people talk about Alzheimer and Parkinson's and all the dementia, all of these things are really coming from these things. So my point I'm trying to make is that learning the latest research, what happens is by the time the research gets into the clinical hand, it takes 20 years. But by you knowing what is actually coming, you can start to develop the products and services and get that in the consumer's hand in 6 months rather than 20 years. And by knowing the latest research allows you to constantly look at where the opportunities are. And so the reason I started Viome was 4 years ago, nobody was talking about microbiome. Now it has become a word that people even understand. But 4 years ago, when I was looking at something new to do, I was reading all these scientific journals and I was thinking, look, I want to focus on chronic diseases. I don't know why people have these diseases. So I started going through all the journals. Why do people have diabetes? Why do people have obesity? How does the heart disease happen? And every one of the research papers is talking about these critters, the organisms. And I was like, what the hell are these things? And then I started learning about microbiome. And that's, so my point was, that was become very clear to me 4 years ago. This thing is starting to happen because all the research is looking at that, but nobody in the general public is talking about that. I still remember 4 years ago, I was talking, my kids are old enough now, right? He said, Dad, what are you going to be doing now after the Moon Express? I said, I think I'm going to start this microbiome company. And they look at me and say, what is a microbiome thing? And I say, we're going to analyze the stool and we're going to look at what's happening in your gut. And all my 3 kids looked at me and said, Dad, you've gone crazy. Nobody's going to do the stool test. I think now is the time for you to hang your hat. You've done your part and move on. Why do you want to start a company? You're going to get your ass handed to you. You're going to fail. And why do you want to go out right into the sunset and go? And I said, I think there is something up here. I really believe this is it. I think I got that. This is going to happen and I'm going to start a healthcare company. And they all looked and said, what do you know about healthcare? I said, nothing. And I said, that is my asset. The fact is, if you are an expert in the field, you'll never be able to get there to say, could this be microbiome? Because experts have already taken for granted, give me the ill, I'll give you the pill. They're not looking at microbiome. So someone like me is going to come along, challenge that foundation, and going to disrupt the whole healthcare industry. And they all looked at me and they say, whatever, Dad, go do whatever you want. And now they all look at me and say, Dad, my friend, he's really having a lot of these digestive issues. Can you please have him look into the Viome? Now every one of them, he said, Dad, I don't know what you did. I thought the Moon Express was the coolest thing. Everybody was my friends were all like, oh my God, your dad is so cool going to the moon. And now they don't care. All they care about is, Dad, can you hook me up with a Viome kit?
Hey, I want you to take a quick split second of your time. All I want you to do is hit the subscribe button and turn on your notifications. I want to update you when I have a next iconic guest on my show. Stay in student mode.
This is Naveen Jain, and you're tuning into Millionaire Student Show with Sashin.
And it's a true reflection that all people need is 10,000 hours. If they want to do it in a longer period of time of 3.5 hours a day, which is 10 years of their life, they pay their 10,000 hours. You did it in a shorter period of time. You studied it, but you walked in with that beginner's mentality, that beginner's mindset. And that's what allowed you to study it. But, Naveen, I've heard you say one's self-worth is not about what they have, but what they've created. How can those who are listening or watching in right now start the process of creating or even co-create if they don't have or they don't have the ability to do it themselves?
So I think, first of all, Sachin, that's a great thing you ask, because your self-worth never comes from owning things. So you could inherit a lot, but you're still a parasite on society because you're not giving back anything, right? To me, your self-worth is about what you create. And what you create is, can you actually go out and solve a problem? Because it is about, being successful in life is really not about how much money you have in the bank. It's really about how many lives you're able to improve. And don't do it because somehow you think it is a charity or a philanthropic. This is how you create a big business. You help 1 million people live a better life, you got $100 million business. You can get 1 billion people to live a better life, you got $100 billion business, right? So point is, these are the massive problems that you can help you create a company. And when you create something, it allows you to solve a pain point that people have. And if you're solving someone's pain, you are a best philanthropist you could ever be, because it's not about giving money that makes you charitable. It's about solving problem that makes you actually charitable, right? So to me, it is everyone who's listening to it is, this is the first time I think in human history, especially post-COVID, it doesn't matter what part of the world you are in. You have access to the same resource as anyone else. Guess what? Whether you're sitting in Delhi, you're sitting in in Johannesburg, or you're sitting in any place else in the world, you can all work together. You can find the talent wherever they are. They can be in Ukraine, they can be in Minneapolis. It doesn't matter, because you can work together. And best part is, the capital is not patriotic. Capital goes wherever the opportunities are. So if you have a great opportunity in Bombay, people are investing in companies at $10 billion valuation there. You create a great company in Cape Town, you're going to get tons of people to come invest in that. So my point is, and the team, by the way, so this is another concept that most people don't understand. It's easier to solve a big problem than to solve a small problem. And here's why. When you tell someone, hey, Sashin, I'm going to start a company, an iPhone app that's going to help you find a roommate. And you say, yeah, great idea, go do it, have some fun, right? When you tell someone, I am going to actually start a company that is going to eliminate or that's going to make illness optional. Now you intrigue the best and the brightest mind. The best and the brightest want to work on the toughest problems. They want to work on something that could become their legacy. That means when you are working on a large problem, you are able to attract the best and the brightest from the world, right? So when I started Viome, guess what? The head of IBM, Watson, came to do the AI for us. He said, you know what? I've done all other things. This is the problem worth solving. The guy who developed the technology for biodefense work at Los Alamos National Lab, he said, you know what? I'm going to quit my federal job. What do I need the federal security for when I can come and solve this problem, right? My point is, the best and the brightest came, and amazing thing happened. When you assemble this best and the brightest, every venture capitalist like, what are you working on? Why are all these people quitting and joining you? I'm going to give you money. So my point was, all this happened because you wanted to solve a big problem. And the biggest fear that everyone with the money has is fear of missing out. They say, holy cow, what if he actually ends up solving it? This could be the biggest thing out there. So nobody wants to miss out. They all want to pile on and give you the money, right? So my point I'm trying to make is, by simply coming up with a possible solutions of how you're going to be able to solve this problem, and ask the same thing, why this, why now, why me? And then you explain to them, the reason I think I have a different way of looking at this problem is because I'm going to look at the gene expression. I'm going to look at what these guys are doing. I'm not going to focus on this. And that's why this problem is now solvable, because the AI, look at the best AI people, the best people who understand the gene expression. I hired them from the human law, Craig Venter's group, the best people who know how to digitize the body. I got them from Los Alamos, and I think I have a shot at solving it. And people say, you know what, how much money do you need, right? And to me, that is the key. So point is, anyone who's listening to it to just know, all these things will happen when you have internal conviction that you are obsessed. That means you are willing to die to solve this problem. People need to feel that in your voice, that come your last drop of blood, you will die, but you will do everything you can to solve this problem. And people invest in people when they have such a strong conviction. They don't want to invest in someone who says, hey, I want to figure out how to make $1 million and I will sell the company the day it becomes $1 million. Because they say, you know what? We don't need someone who is looking for an exit. We're looking for someone who is going to create a massive company and is really believes in solving this. Along the lines, if somebody were to come along and say, here's $10 billion, I'm not saying I'm that stupid to say I'm not going to do it. But the point is, I don't go out and say that is what I'm going to do.
And it all starts from the educational system, because that allows us to go down the right path. So I was a straight D student in high school, and I didn't cut it out in the classroom. And then I went on to formulate about 20 different companies. But most importantly, we both are in an agreement that education is our plan B. But through society's programming and perception of grades, titles, that truly define us as well as put us in a price tag of our title. What are your thoughts about the current educational system? And most importantly, how can people right now change a narrative in our mind about education and moving it towards a plan B as opposed to that plan A?
So I think the education is fundamentally broken today. And the reason I say it is broken is, in a sense, it is obsolete more than broken, because it was designed to teach you skills. And in olden days, in the World War II, any skill you learn, you could use it for the rest of your life and you could have a productive job. Today, we are living in this world of exponential technologies. And what that means is by the time you graduate with any skill, that skill has already become obsolete, right? You learn to do C++, now it's all Java, and you say, I'm obsolete. What am I supposed to do? Any skill you learn by the time you graduate, I'm really good at MySpace or Facebook. Who uses Facebook now? You don't know Instagram, you're done, right? My point is, everything you learn, it becomes obsolete. So the best education system is learning to learn, learning to solve problems, learning to actually work with the people who may be completely different. That means all about collaborating. And it is about understanding, unlike education system today, there is more than one right answer. In our education system, we are taught, here is the problem, here are the 4 possible questions. If you think there are more than one right answer, you're wrong. And whereas in life, it is very different. In life, it's all about possibilities. That means there could be more than one way of solving the problem. So to me, the education should be about intellectual curiosity. And that's one thing we actually focused with our kids on. It wasn't just about teaching them skills, about developing that intellectual curiosity. That means, what if it actually could be possible? What if this actually worked? So every time they come back and say, oh, I didn't think I can do this, or I don't think this will work. My question always is, just for a second, imagine if this could work. Imagine if this was possible. What would that life look like? But once you start to imagine and describe what would the look like, you can create it, right? So to me, as an educator, as a parent, our job should not be to take you to the water and make you drink. Our job should be to make you thirsty. And by making you thirsty, what happens? You will find the water and you will drink it. And the thirst comes from always becoming intellectually curious. That means every time I read something, I say, that is very interesting. What if that we could take that and solve this problem? What if this was possible? What if we could actually travel to beyond our galaxy? What would that be like, right? My point is, if you can start to think about what are the things can be done, because the only limitations to what you and I can achieve is our imagination, right? And the problem you and I both face is, even the people who love us the most, they always tell you you can do anything. And then you know what they say? Sky is the limit. They put the limit right there. The sky is the limit. Now, most people probably don't know the sky doesn't exist, right? Sky is a figment of our imagination. It is simply what we imagine, that line, the sky. When you go from here to the moon, you don't say, hey, mom, I just passed the sky. There is no sky, right? So my point is, how many skies do we create in our own path? And those skies are, oh, I can't go past that. Like when someone says a human body cannot run a mile under 4 minutes, and no one did, until one person showed it could be done. And a year later, 13 more people did that. So my point is that our mind creates these these limits that cannot be broken until someone shows that they can be broken, then and say, of course it is possible, right? So every idea is a crazy idea the day before the breakthrough happens. After the breakthrough happens, it becomes an obvious idea, right? So to me, it's okay when people tell you you're damn crazy, that will never happen, that will never work. And all that really means is they are not the one who are going to be solving this problem. It is someone else, because they already determined they can't be done, right?
There's a small percentage of people, and that's all we want to impact, that's on this podcast right now, they'll be watching this, that will probably do something. The majority would sit here and say, these guys are onto something, they're absolutely crazy. But it's the crazy people that truly disrupt and dominate and innovate. It's the crazy people that actually do it. And then when it's done, as you mentioned, the records, the doors start to be formulated and open. Why do you believe that entrepreneurs of today are going to be the superpower of tomorrow?
Well, the reason for that is if you look at in the past, the biggest problems were solved by who? In olden days, it used to be the kings and the queens. Then it became the aristocrats and these robber barons. And then they became the nation states that were solving the problem of whether it's going to the space or education or healthcare, or everything was done by these nation states. But today, if you look at every one of those problems are not being solved by the nation states, is being solved by entrepreneurs. Now you go back looking at the space. Who is doing it? It is, Virgin Galactic, it is SpaceX, it is the entrepreneurs who are going out and doing it. Do you think that healthcare is going to be solved by Obamacare or Putin care? It's going to be solved by an entrepreneur saying, enough is enough. We just don't want people to be sick, and we're going to prevent that. Because the problem you have is our, healthcare system today, especially in US, everyone makes money when you're sick. And no one makes money when you're not sick. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but to me, why would they want to keep you healthy if everyone who is in the system is going to die by keeping you healthy? They're going to say, screw that. I would rather have him die than us die. So guess what? Every time they see a chronic disease, they look at you as a lifetime subscriber, not to cure a disease, but to give you a drug to suppress the symptoms, so you have to take it for the rest of your life, right? And that is a problem. And the only way that problem gets solved is some crazy guy like me says, I don't really care. I'm going to go solve this problem. I don't make money from keeping people sick. I'm going to make money from making people healthy, right? And that is the key, is to someone coming from outside the system that has no baggage to be able to solve that. Same thing, education is going to be solved, but there is more people who are getting educated by Khan Academy than actually being done by schools, right? You learn so much. That means the entrepreneurs of tomorrow are going to create this virtual education system that our universities are still struggling. They cannot figure out in a COVID, if they don't open, what happens to college, right? My point is, someone is going to say, oh my God, COVID happened. Let's just screw this whole idea of college system. Let's create an online college and let's make it all work, right? And let's get the best and the brightest from every industry and make them part of one college system, which is online. Because you go to Harvard, you may have a best chemistry professor, but the best biology professor is Stanford, and the best professor for nanotechnology may be at MIT, and the best professor for something maybe some. Why not bring the best and put them all under virtual college? And now you have the best online college that you can do. So my point is, it's all going to happen, and some entrepreneur is going to solve this problem. It cannot be done by a nation state, because the talent is not within a geographical boundaries anymore. The talents are everywhere. The best person may be in Russia, the best entrepreneur may be in China, and you can all work together as entrepreneurs, because there are no boundaries that entrepreneurs have to respect, where the nation states have to say, oh, it's not I can't work with Chinese, I can't work with Russians, right?
So I've heard you say making money is like having an orgasm, and you have to let it happen and enjoy the process. We as humans have an expectation, as if the world owes us something. So we expect instant results, or even putting effort into the microwave, hitting 60 seconds and producing success. There's always a price to pay. And, how should people start to formulate a delayed gratification mentality?
Well, oh my God, it really is about anything you get in a short term only lasts a short term. If you can learn to enjoy the process, not only you get more of it, but you get more often of it, right? So the point is it's about focusing on continuing and the journey and enjoying that journey, right? And again, I think in terms of making money and orgasm, it is really the right way of looking at it. People who focus on making money never get it. And the reason they never succeed in making money, just like when you want to have an orgasm, you keep focusing on it, you never get it. When you just enjoy the process, it happens. So to me, it needs to be about the journey that you enjoy, because it's a long path of that journey. And if you're trying to solve a massive problem, even if you fail to reach the destination, you fail to reach the last goal line, in my opinion, you keep pushing the humanity forward. And even if you don't, someone else is like a relay race. Somebody's going to come along and stand on your shoulder and take that baton and take it across the finish line. Guess what? The humanity still benefited from what you did. And to me, that is the satisfaction you have to drive, is that you don't have to win. You just have to keep pushing it forward. And even if you don't succeed, someone else will take it from there and actually solve the problem. And that's all really matters at the end of the day.
So your dad passed on with pancreatic cancer. Was that a point in your life that stimulated you to focus on resolving the problem of people who are affected by cancer, Alzheimer's, Parkinson, or even depression?
It obviously impacted a lot, because it was pretty obvious to me that he didn't have to die. There is so much research that clearly shows how the gut microbiome goes through bile duct, goes into the pancreas, and actually starts to form the tumor, and it protects the tumor from the immune system by letting the immune system know it's all good here, because our microorganisms our immune system becomes immune tolerant to these microorganisms, that it doesn't attack them, because it says they're part of the human body. Because from the time they live in our body, it becomes part of the human body. So when they're inside the tumor, the immune system thinks it's just, these organisms are just part of the body, so it doesn't attack them. And that's how so there was the research I was holding in my hand, that this professor at NYU saw that happen, and he injected the antibiotics in the pancreas of these mice, and that killed the microbiome through the antibiotics, and the immune system automatically killed the tumor, because there was no longer the microorganisms that were protecting it. And I'm holding that, and I'm telling the doctor, Doc, all I am asking you is to just put this antibiotics in my dad's pancreas. And he says, we will not do that, because that's not the protocol. And I'm saying, I'm authorizing you, my dad is authorizing you, I got this research, he's going to die, why don't you do that? And they said, we will not do that, because that is not we are taught in medical school. Right? And he died. So my point I'm trying to make is that the medical system, these people are not even taught about what is happening. It's 20 years later. Today, they are taught, they're not, by the way, every doctor who goes to medical school are never taught about nutrition. They're not taught about microbiome. They are funded by the pharmaceutical companies, where the doctor really is a salesperson for pharma company. What symptoms do you have? Here's the drug I prescribe. Give me the symptom, I'll give you the drug, right? Every ill, there is a pill. And I hate to say that. And a lot of these pills are sold because there's some pretty woman who comes along and say, hey, doc, you're not prescribing any Lipitor here. Do you need to go to Hawaii or something? We'll take you to Hawaii next year, right? And next thing you know, the person who walks in, Sashin, you're getting a Lipitor, right? And my point is, we are human beings, and we get, somehow get manipulated by these things, that system that comes along. So my really hope is that we can develop these artificial intelligence that actually understands the human body at a molecular level, and not being impacted by some pretty girl that walks in, because AI doesn't really care. It says, you don't need no Lipitor. You just need to cut down the following foods from your diet and you'll be just fine, right? So my point is, we at Viome are absolutely dedicated to using the food as a medicine to prevent and reverse chronic diseases. And I really believe that in a decade from now, we will hopefully would have solved this problem, and then no one else will have to suffer from a chronic disease unless they really make a choice to do so.
Naveen, I've heard you say that less than 1% of our genes come from DNA. Do genetics or DNA play an important role in our destiny?
Yeah, what I was trying to say was that human genes, the human DNA that we get from mom and dad, account for about 22,000 protein coding genes, right? But if you look at our gut, there are 39 trillion of them. They produce somewhere between 2 million to 20 million of these protein coding genes. That means if you look at all the genes that are expressed in the human body, less than 1% of them come from human genes. That means we are really living in the world of microbiome. We are living in the world of organism. Every time you breathe air, you are inhaling millions and billions of these organisms you're inhaling. And when you're exhaling these organisms, we are literally an ecosystem inside us and part of this larger ecosystem we call the planet Earth. And that's the reason, when you walk into the nature, you are inhaling all the microbiome from the plant. People who used to live in the farm, they're constantly interacting with animals, the poops. I mean, literally, that's how they never get allergies. They never get Alzheimer's. These people are just essentially living in a larger ecosystem. When you live in New York in a concrete jungle, you're not getting any of that stuff. And that's the reason we have more and more pandemic or epidemic of these chronic diseases. And hopefully, as we start to take care of our own health and start to control our own health, become the CEO of our own health, we'll be able to find exactly what nutrition we need, what supplements we need, and hopefully someday take control of not being sick.
In closing up with the last few questions, in your opinion, what are your personal rules of success and how can people get to manifest everything they want in life?
So I would say, like, my parting words would be that, dream really big. Dream so big that people think you're crazy, and never be afraid to fail, because you only fail when you give up. Your idea may or may not work. Every idea that does not work is simply a stepping stone to a different idea and a bigger idea. So never, ever be afraid to try something, because if you don't try, you can never succeed. And I really think that for everyone who's listening to it, just know that you don't have to be an expert in the problem you're trying to solve. As a matter of fact, your biggest asset is that you are not an expert, that you're able to look at the problem from a completely different perspective than anyone else. So to me, the entrepreneurs are the best gift that they, to the humanity, because every entrepreneur not only goes out and solves the problem that could help a million people, they create jobs, they create wealth, they are to go there. And as I said, they inspire more people to go out and solve more problems. So to me, everyone who is listening to you to know that you are a gift to the humanity if you can go out and start a company to solve the problem, because not only you help yourself, you also help the humanity.
One of my trademark questions on the show is, what does self-talk and your internal dialogue with yourself sound like daily?
Yeah, so my internal dialogue always says that, there is nothing that is impossible to do unless you come to the conclusion that it is impossible. Because the day you come to that conclusion, that means you are not the one who's going to be able to solve that problem. Every time you have to believe that you cannot look at the world as is. Focus on the world, what you want it to be. So this idea that people have this, optimist looks at this glass half full, or, a pessimist look at the half empty. To me, that is even the wrong question. All you have to ask yourself is, do I want to fill that glass or not? Because if I want to fill that glass, then does it really matter is half empty or half full? And if I don't want to fill that glass, does it really matter is half empty or half full? So that means focus on what is your North Star. What are you willing to die for, and then live for it? And the one way to know that you are working on the wrong thing is, anytime when you wake up in the morning and you don't jump out of the bed, that means whatever you're working on, quit and find something that makes you jump out of the bed.
To wrap it up, Naveen, you said your mission is to inspire people to find their own moon shard and to understand what do they want to do in life. What steps can people take going out of this podcast right now to execute the information they actually absorbed today?
Yeah, well, one thing, as I said, is that find out your true north. Find out what you're truly obsessed about. What are you willing to die for? Or in other words, if you had everything in your life that you want, and if you had that, what would you do? And if you do that today, you will get everything that you want in life.
Naveen, thank you so much for being on the Millionaire Student Show today. I truly appreciate your time and, just your wisdom, your knowledge, and everything you bring to the show.
Thank you, brother. Really appreciate it, and I look forward to it. And